We have this special day, the time that we commemorate. It's a Yortzeit of Moshe Rabbeinu, the 7th day of the month of Adar. According to our tradition, Moshe Rabbeinu was born and died at the age of 120, and it's a special day since the Chevra Kadisha, the sacred society, the righteous people, men and women separately, are taking care of the dead body, which is doing all the preparations before the burial. It's called Chevra Kadisha, the sacred society. These people have one day that they quote-unquote celebrate. In many kehilot, in many congregations worldwide, they have that day as a little informal gathering, a little kiddush, and the reason for that is because according to the Torah, this is the only day the Chevra Kadisha, at least in the ancient time, are not busy with the preparation for burial. The Torah tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu was buried by Hashem, which means the Torah said at the very end of Deuteronomy that the Almighty buried himself, quote-unquote, Moshe Rabbeinu. So this is a very special day. Some kehilot, some congregation has it as a fast day. Some people does a special lighting Yortzeit candle, but it's a very special day because he was the redeemer of the Jewish people. He was the one who responsible to be the emissary of Hashem, and therefore it's a huge zchut. With that in mind, we are here for the purpose of study special page 139 in the Tractate Shabbat. And the reason that we gather together is to learn many things. One of them is why in the Jewish history so many times we as a people suffered, speaking not only in a sense of individually but also collectively. It's a serious question that goes back to the Talmudic time, which is approximately around 1600 years ago. The sages, the ancient sages in the Babylon, have a discussion what's the reason of Jewish suffering, and soon you hear what they have to say. For sure there are other subjects we're going to cover this morning, including several new Hilchot Shabbat. Page 139, 2 lines from the top of the page. תניא רבי יוסי בן אישה אומר, אם ראית דור שצרות רבות באות עליו, צא ובדוק בדייני ישראל, שכל פורענות שבא לעולם לא באה לה בשביל דייני ישראל, שנאמר, שימון הזאת ראשי בית יעקב וקציני בית ישראל המתאבים משפט, ואת כל הישרה יעקשו, בונה ציון בדמים, וירושלים בעוולה ראשיה בשוחד ישפעו, וכהונה במחיר יראו, ונביאה בכסף וקצומו על השם ישענו. This is a text from the book of Micah, chapter 3, sentences 9 to 11. Here is what Rabbi Yossi ben Elisha says. He said, if you notice the generation that have many trouble befalling upon that generation, you should examine the judge of Israel. I remember one time I was teaching this class, and in our community we have 6 judges, and I can't tell you how uncomfortable I was while teaching it. But what they're saying here, perhaps their sins are the cause, as any calamity that comes to the world come to the judges of Israel acting corruptly. And this is the long statement from the book of Micah. What did they say in the book of Micah? So now the GEMARA comments over this statement. Number 1, they said Resha'im hen, the Kohanim, Nevi'im, the leaders are wicked. אלא שתלו ביטחונם במי שאמר והיה העולם. But they place their trust in the Almighty God, that He will not bring them any evil. Which means the Yoni Yaakov said that in a way, because they have the trust in Hashem, God in His compassion sometimes have compassion upon them and not punish. But in a sense they deserve. How come? So they explain. Here they said that it was depend how much you pay. The beginning of book of Ruth. You remember when we studied Ruth? It was the time of the judge's judge. It was a corruption. The more you pay, the better. You get away with a murder. You can get away with all kind of corruption while you're paying the attorneys, or you're paying the judge or the organization that he has in his campaign. So that's, he said, eventually lefichach, and consequently, מביא הקדוש ברוך הוא עליהם שלוש פרעוניות כנגד שלוש עמרות ידם. God befall upon them three different calamities that are corresponding to the three transgressions which they are responsible. שנאמר, they said again in book of Micah, chapter 3, לכן בגללכם ציון תחרש וירושלים עין תהיה והר הבית לבמות יער. Therefore, because of you, Zion shall be plowed as a field. Yerushalayim shall become heaps, and the Temple Mount as the high places of the forest. So here is all a reflection to the bad behavior of the leader of the generation. The Maharal explains that it's go measure for measure. So because beshochad ishpodu, because in their judge, so the result of that, they have a result that sadeh techaresh, that unfortunately they have this sadness coming on that they plowing the field, and then b'mechir yoru, they get paid for their judgment. So the result is that they have unfortunately Yerushalayim, the centerpiece of the Torah, that sadness, it's like destruction. And the three, unvia bechesef iksomu, that the prophets get paid for say whatever they said. It says the place, the Temple Mount, that is a centerpiece of the judgment. That's the place that the Sanhedrin used to be. It turned to Vamot Yar. So again, it's like measure for measure. But the Khatam Sofer have a lot to say. He explains that it's in a way the big question is, you asked, why the generation need to suffer? Let's say the judges' rules is the corruptions, avaricious people who have a lot of money control the court system. Yet average person, a righteous average person, needs to suffer because of all of that corruption. Where is the justice? So the Khatam Sofer elaborate on that. Anyway, ואין הקדוש ברוך הוא משרה את שכינתו על ישראל עד שיכלו שופטים ושוטרים רעים מישראל. And they said that the Almighty God will not rest His divine presence upon the Jewish people until the evil judges and officers shall be eliminated from the Jewish people. Which means that they said in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 15 that shoftim v'shotrim, that you need to have officers to enforce the judgment. But if these people are corrupted, then it's like you go to South America. I have a chance several times to go there. You look at me, right? They stop the taxi driver. He asked me if I have few coins, you can give the officer and let her go, you know, for tickets, all kind of things. In the airport, I call my friend. It was those days the chief rabbi of Mexico City. I said, they stopped me in the airport. I didn't do anything. So he said, do you have some gums, some jeans? I said, I have some chocolate. He says, open your suitcase, put several chocolates and let you go. So I did it, and it happens. Anyway, so shene'emar, they said in the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, sentence 25-26, V'ashiva yadi alaich, so all these, and I'll turn my hand upon you. You guys are laughing, but that's true. That it's a promise that he said, V'etzrof kabor sigaich. So bor is like borit, which means that all these evil that among you I pull out. In other words, the good people not need to suffer because of them. Ve'asir hakol bli laich, because otherwise everybody suffer because of these people. So God promised that He will pull out all these bad people that influence the society. And then, Mitzvah Hashem, ve'ashiva shoftaich kabarishona, ve'yotzaich kavatchila, which means I restore you judges as we said, Ashivenu Hashem Elecha v'nashuva, when we return the Torah to the ark. Chadesh yamenu kekedem. So I restore you judges at first, and you counselors at the beginning, and after you shall be called the city of righteousness, a faithful city. That's a famous text from the book of Yeshayahu, Isaiah, the first chapter, 25-26. Amar Ula, En Yerushalayim nifdet. So there are two different options. The Rambam and the Tur say that it's Israel will not be redeemed. But here the text said Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim will not redeem. Ela bitzdaka. Only toward righteousness. So tzedakah can be righteousness deed, can be tzedakah, can be a piety with money. But the point is, the Metzudot have a different interpretation. Shene'emar Tzion b'mishpat tzipadeh v'shaveh b'tzedakah. So the two things. One is by the true judgment, Tzion will be redeemed. And then the people, v'shaveh, people who do teshuva, or people who will be a capture as shevi, they redeem by tzedakah. So the Rambam too and said the nation of Israel will be redeemed toward the tzedakah. Amar Rav Papa. So now we talk about the end of the days when all this evil of judgment and the judges will disappear. He says, if it will, all these arrogant people, all the arrogant will cease to exist. So they said the Persian fire priest will cease to exist as well. So that's applied to one way. The Rashi call it parashim. Others said, the Rama said that it's applied to people. Most probably in those days they used to have blorit, either a hair at the front or ponytail on the back. So several things that Darkei Mori, that the other nations used to do, and they just copy. Like unfortunately throughout our history, the people look out what the others does and try to copy even things that are very wrong. They try to copy them, etc. If the judges will cease to exist, they said batle gzir patei. So the royal officers and the taskmaster will cease to exist. If the arrogant will cease, the Persian fire priest will cease. As it's written, we just read it, I will purge away your dross. They said in the book of Tzfanya that if the deceitful judges cease, and the royal officers and taskmaster will cease, so they said that the Lord has removed your judgment, cast your enemy. So it's very much interconnected. The corruption of the judges, the corruption of the leadership leads to a destruction. If they remove that, then the light will come out at the end of the tunnel. How the GEMARA elaborate on this situation with the bad judges in his several memrot from Rabbi Malai. אמר רבי מלאי משום רבי אלעזר ברבי שמעון מאי דכתיב שברתם מה שמטה רשעים שבט מושלים. So he said, what is the meaning? It's a sentence in the book of Isaiah chapter 14. They said the Lord has broke the staff of the wicked, the rod of the rulers. So he now explained what does that mean. שבר השם מטה רשעים אלו הדיינים שנעשו מקל לחזניהם. This applied to the first part. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked, is the judges that became staff for their attendants. So it's a situation of abuse. So it's like the people, the attendants abuse people, and the judges provide the attendants with legal backing and moral support. So they said, okay, if you pay me more, I'll do that. And they add more to their wages inappropriately. Shevet Moshlim, the rod of the rulers, Elu Talmidei Chachamim Shemishpechot Dayanim, which means that's applied to the Torah scholars that they assist relatives, the judges, conceal their fault, and they just cover up for them. Which means you go and you see that the judges rule in a wrong way, and you go to the relatives and he said, come on, for example, the teacher, rabbi, whatever, leader in the community, how come they rule in such a way that it's so evil? And because they are cousins and relatives, they cover up for them and they don't tell you the truth. You look at me like I'm saying something that don't you think that that's something that occurred so much in our generation? Just you need to read the paper a little bit.
Definitely.
מר זוטרא אמר, אלו תלמידי חכמים שמלמדים הלכות ציבור לדייני בור. So Mar Zutra said that that's applied to the Torah scholars that teach communal halachot to ignorant judges. So there are two explanations. What does that mean? One way is to say that when you teach an ignorant judge just enough Torah and modes of conduct to prevent the people from realizing how ignorant they are, so enabling them to maintain their position. That's Rabbi Steinsaltz's way of explanations. There is a Rashi here that said that that's applied to that the Torah scholar that teaching in a way inappropriately, or teaching them just what they like to hear, and therefore they created a bad judgment. אמר רבי אלעזר בר מלאי משום ריש לקיש, מהי דכתיב? What is the meaning of ישעיהו, Isaiah 59, כי כפיכם נוגעלו ודם ואצבעותיכם בעוון שפתותיכם דיברו שקר לשונכם עוולה תהגה. What does that mean when they said, for your hands are defiled with blood and your fingers with iniquity, your lips have spoken lies and your tongue utter weaknesses? כי כפיכם לא בדם על הדיינים. For your hands defiled with blood, it's applied to judges who take brides with their hands. And then ואצבעותיכם בעוון אלו סופרי הדיינים, and your fingers with iniquity that describe in the judges. Cipher the diner, the one who's sitting there and write the minutes or write the falsehood on the fingers. שפתותיכם דיברו שקר, your lips have spoken lies. This is the legal advisor. עורכי הדיינים. לשונכם עוולה תהיה לו בעלי דינים. Your tongue utters with wickedness. This is litigations, the litigants themselves. So, which means they're using lies, the Ritva said, and they knew the truth that the other party is right, but they twisted the truth, they're exaggerating the truth in order to win the case. ואמר רבי מלאי משום רבי יצחק מגדלה. So now, since we brought several memrod, so we brought the other memrod from him. מיום שפירש יוסף ואכל אותם טעם יין. From the day that Yosef distanced himself from his brothers, so he didn't taste the wine. דכתיב, but because it's written in Bereshit in Genesis 49, ולקודקוד נזיר אחיו. Nazir is like Nazirite, so it means the kodkod, the one who they shall be the head of Joseph and the crown of the head who is separated. So that's the idea of Nazir from his brother. רבי יוסי בר חנינא אמר, אף הן לא טעמו טעם יין, דכתיב וישתו וישכרו עמו. Also the brothers was said over that situation. They said when they met and they sat and ate together in Bereshit 43, they said that they sat and they drink together. מכלל דעד העידנא לא, meaning that up to that point they didn't drink. ואידך, שיחוד הוא דלא היה, שתייה מאהבה. So other option is that they never get drunk, but they drink a regular wine. So depend how you take this line of וישתו וישכרו. ואמר רבי מילאי, בזכר, now another member from him, because it's a reward that Aaron did what he promised to his brother Moshe. They said in Shmot, in Exodus 4, ורעך ושמח בליבו, that it wasn't a jealousy between brothers, and since Hashem appointed Moshe Rabbeinu to be the leader, so it happens sometimes in the best families that one brother was jealous over the success of the other. Hashem promised Moshe Rabbeinu that Aaron with his righteousness will be more than happy to see that Moshe Rabbeinu was appointed to be the head leader. So they said that that's exactly what happens. That Aaron rewarded by Hashem to have the breastplate, the first one to wear it on his heart, because if he will have deep in his heart even a small enviness, a small jealousy, he will not be happy. But because Hashem knew what he had in his heart, and his simcha, his happiness with the full-hearted, so therefore Maharal explained that was the reward measure for measure, that he have a good heart, Hashem give to his heart something that have a fullness without any type of other motives. Shalchu lebnei Bashkar lelevi. So the community of Bashkar brought a question to Levi. Now we a question return to the law of canopy. So they ask him, Mahu kila Mahu. What's the halacha in regard to spreading the canopy on Shabbat? So kshuta bechamra Mahu. Second question was, what is the halacha with regard to hops in a vineyard? The third question, met biyom tov Mahu. If someone pass away on Yom Tov on the festival, what is the halacha in regards to all the burial process? Do we allow to dig in a ground on festival? In Shabbat it's called boneh or choresh, which is either building or plowing. So, but what happened at festival is a different halachot. Until the messenger brought from that city, from Bashkar, until the place that Levi was leading, Levi passed away. Amar Shmuel, so since Shmuel heard about that story, L'Rav Menashe icha kimat shlach lehu. If you are smart enough, in other words, if you are erudite with this matter, you can respond to them. Shalach lehu, kila chazarnu al kol tzidei kila, v'lo manu tzad eter. So he said, as far as the kila, as far as the canopy is concerned, so we review all the aspects in a matter of canopy, and it's nothing possible to go lenient. So how about if we go what we said in the previous page of 138, that Rami ben Yechezkel said that if it was a string that tight in advance, so you can move the canopy on Shabbat. So it means not a canopy of the bridegroom. It's only something that the top was a 1 hand breadth. That's what the Rashba and the Ritva said. So he said, he responded and he said, no, the fish nam bnei Torah, because these people are not people of engaged in the life of Torah, and therefore the minute you open the door and you give them something lenient, it will be a snowball, and they go downhill, and they go in a spot that it's forbidden to say, okay, if that was lenient, let's go further, and they go with their leniency. So that's the reason he was not in favor of doing that. The second question, kshuta becharma irbuva. He asked a question about kilaim, and he said that a hope in the vineyard are a forbidden mixture of diverse kind. So he said, ולשלח לו כדרבי טרפון לתניא קישוט רבי טרפון אומר אין כליים בחרם. Let him send, ask a messenger to permit, according to Rabbi Tarfon, that he said that the hopes, Rabbi Tarfon said there is no constitute of forbidden of mixtures of food crops in a vineyard. So they said, וחכמים אומרים, כליים בחרם. The sages said, yes, it is a situation of food in a vineyard, that it's a mix of the two. So Rashi said that the machloket, if it's a yerek or ilan, if it's a considering as a small tree or just some type of vegetable, the Ritva have a different school of thought. But they said here, v'kaimalan kol hamekel ba'aretz halacha kmoto bechutz la'aretz. Anyone who's lenient in the mixture in Isur Kilayim in Eretz Yisrael, we go by halacha according to his opinion outside of Eretz Yisrael. So you have a kilaim, if you have diverse kind, apply only by the rabbinic law. So therefore, so the city of Bashkar, that it's outside of Eretz Yisrael, so it's considering okay, and that's going basically by Rabbi Tarfon. So they said again, lefish enam bnei Torah.
So is Rashi then saying that if it was a tree, some sort of a tree fruit, it would be okay to grow in a vineyard?
If you go by Rabbi Tarfon, you go by the Chachamim.
Well, the Chachamim say hops are not is kilayim.
Correct.
But it sounded like what you said to Rashi. The question was whether the hops were considered as growing on a tree or being a vegetable.
Correct.
And if they consider vegetable, then it's kilayim.
Yes, but the thing is...
So if it was what I'm saying, say it was a different kind of tree that was in a vineyard, like say a date palm.
Correct.
Would that would be okay?
Yes.
According to Rashi. Okay,
yes.
so fruits together are okay, vegetables together are okay, but not mixing fruits and vegetables?
Not mixing fruits. Now,
okay,
I think they don't let this halacha in that city because they are not familiar with the Torah law, and the minute you lenient with them, go downhill. That's the point. Next one is Machriz Rav Haiman Devai LeMizra Kshuta Becharma Lizra. So if someone wants to seek to sow hops in the vineyard, let him sow. So there are several things. Rav live outside of Eretz Israel, so he allowed to plant this sow in the vineyard. That according to Rabbi Tarfon, that goes to say that outside of Eretz Israel for sure it's okay. Now, by the way, if you notice the price of etrogim, so they have etrogim that it's a mixture, murkavim, and they have bilti murkavim. There are those communities that using etrog in the sukkot only when it's not a mixture.
When there's nothing.
Because usually when you see a beautiful etrog, you may check if it's a mixture or not, murkav or bilti murkav. Because sometimes the mixer, in order to make it beautiful, because originally speaking, when you plant the original seed, it has to be a special process to make it in a way that it looks without blemish. Anyway, so they said, Rav Amram Chasida minaged ilavei, Rav Mishar she'ev lepruta l'titnok nochi vezara le. So there are several ideas. Rav Amram Chasida will administer lashes for sowing hops in a vineyard. Rav Mishar she'ah, what did he do? He give a small coin to a non-Jewish child, and the child will sow hops for him. So therefore, it's like he hold the Tosfot said that outside of Eretz Israel is also permissible, but he said that the place that the people are not Bnei Torah, the people who study Torah, we should make some changes in order to avoid any misleading information for people who are not educated, for ignorant people. That's the way that Rashi and Ramban and Chidush Aran and Ritva hold. Velitl Tinok Israel. So why you give it to a non-Jewish child? You give it to a Jewish child. So they said Atele Misrach, because what happened with him. He may come to continue this habit and violate the prohibition as an adult, because you recall what happened when he was a child. So therefore you have to be careful. So why a young one? You should give it to a non-Jewish adult. So they said, so people may confuse with him with a fellow Jew, so therefore you don't do it. The third question we ask, what happened if someone died on a festival? So he said, שלח להוא, מת לא יתעסקו בקבורתו לא יהודים ולא ארמיים, לא ביום טוב ראשון, לא ביום טוב שני. So he said, no. Leave it and wait until the completion of Yom Tov, neither the first day nor the second day of Yom Tov. You should not involve with burial, and even the second day that observe in the diaspora. So they said, Eini, is that so? ואמר רבי יהודה בר שילת אמר רבי יאסי עובדה עבד בקנישתא דמעון ביום יום טוב הסמוך לשבת. It was a place in a synagogue, a place called Ma'on, that somebody passed, and it was a day of the festival that attached to Shabbat. 39b, ולא ידענה אם מלפניה אם מלאחריה. So it happens right at the time of Shabbat, and we are not sure if it's a before or after. Now, as you remember, we just said that the issue on Shabbat is either boneh, which is a building, or choresh, plowing. So that's both a prohibition that you cannot do on Shabbat. So they said, since I don't know if the Yom Tov was before Shabbat or after, so Atu lekamel Rabbi Yochanan amar lo yitasku be'amamiyin. So he hold that a non-Jews can do the digging of the grave on the second day. So the big discussion is number one, halanat hamet. Number one, you delay the burial. As you know, by halacha we have to bury as soon as possible.
Right.
Now, the sages forbids to do burial on Shabbat. Even the body the body carries some
decompose,
right, and all the odor around the body, etc. But on the other hand, they don't want to commit a violation of Shabbat because of the dead body. But the big question is if the body is not carry any odor at this point. So therefore, the big question is, can we wait until the Yom Tov is over? So the second day of Yom Tov, we're not yet in a practical halachot, but the second day of Yom Tov, as you see, it's much more leniency. The first day of Yom Tov, it's a different story. But as you see here, he suggested that they should use a non-Jew to attend to his burial.
Is it different nowadays because they have ways of sort of preventing the decomposition?
By freezing the body in a special room?
It and so forth?
So number one, those funeral homes that have that, for sure they do it nowadays that they wait. But the question you can ask is what happened in the sense of burial, digging the grave. Some people who are very observant and want to bury, like we do in Israel, right away. Mm-hmm. So if someone passed on the first day of Yom Tov,
sure,
even of the eve of the first day of Yom Tov,
and it's okay to get a...
So now you have 48 hours until the Yom Tov is over. And even you have the body freeze in a big cold room, you still, until they do all the preparations, it's more than 2 days from the time of passing, which is we should not do. So what happened is, soon you see the leniency as far as the non-Jewish people prepare the gravesite, prepare the burial part during the second day of the festival, soon you see leniency in that sense.
But as far as the actual act of burying and filling the...
In nowadays, soon you see the halachot.
But that was not done by non-Jews. That would be done by Jews. I'm saying if they dug the grave,
yes, then
the actual act of burying the body and filling the grave back in.
Yes, but they're done by Jews after Yom Tov is over.
Oh, so they place him in the grave and leave it open. And
we soon see the halachot.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The point I try to say is, the question that left in the air, which we resolve later, is can the non-Jewish people, the grave diggers, can involve with the preparation during the second day of Yom Tov, the second day observing in diaspora. So they said, Ve'amar Rava, met b'Yom Tov Rishon. Rava said if a person died on the first day of festival, yitasku bo amamim. The non-Jews should involve with burial. B'Yom Tov Sheni yitasku bo Israel. If it's the second day of festival, the Jewish people, the Jewish colleague, friends, etc., should be involved with his burial. Va'afilu b'Yom Tov Sheni shel Rosh Hashanah, even the second day of the Rosh Hashanah. Ma she'en ken bebeya, lefi she'enan bnei Torah. But not in regard to eggs, which means with regard to an egg laid on a festival, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are considered one long day, cannot be disconnected. So they said because why did Rav Menashe prohibit the inhabitants of Bashar from attending the burial of festivals? So he said because they are not well versed in the Torah, so therefore they can come to do a kind of leniency, the same mindset, in a place that they should not. אמר רב אבין, ברב הונא, אמר רב חמא בר גויה, מתעטף אדם בחילה ובסכסכיה ויוצא לרשות הרבים בשבת ואינו חושש. Says that the person can go ahead and use the canopy, that it's like a very large a sheet and kaskasea, so it's like a strap, and go out to a public domain on Shabbat, and he's not need to be concerned that he's in a violation of the Prohibition Act of carrying a burden. So now they ask, Mishna de Ravuna, Amar Ravuna Amarav, Hayotze betalit shena metzuyetzet kilchata b'Shabbat chayav chatat. If someone goes unwittingly to a public domain on Shabbat with a four-corner garment that does not have the requisite ritual finger attached, which means, for example, if you have only 3 out of 4 in the tzitzit, in the fringes, so since those fringes considering a burden, so he did it unwittingly, so he deserved to have a sin offering. So they said, so in that sense, in the same manner, we can juxtapose to the canopy, that if a person carry that canopy around him, it's considering a burden. So he will be liable for carrying it. So the GEMARA responded and said, tzitzit legabe talit chashivel. Ritual fingers are significant relative to a garment and are not negated. Velo batle. So they said, Hani lachashivei ubatle. But those straps of the canopy are not significant and are negated. אמר רבא בר אבונה מרים אדם על המשמרת ביום טוב לתלות ברימונים תולה בשמרים. אמר רבא שיבוד לברימונים. Rabba bar Avuna said that a person nevertheless employ artifice and circumvent the prohibition against suspending a strainer by taking it on a festival and suspending it for the purpose of the pomegranate in it, which is permitted. Once the strainer is suspended, he may suspend it in order to filter sediment from the wine. And as even the rabbis hold that on festival it is permitted to do so, this strainer to throw the strainer that is already suspended. That's apply only when he suspended pomegranates in it before using the strainer wine. So that it must be obvious that all he used, the strainer, is permitted manner. So the GEMARA asks, Mishna deha de Tanya metilin shechar b'moed letzorach hamoed shelo letzorach hamoed asur. They said in a Braita that one may begin brewing beer during the intermediate day of a festival for the purpose of using it at a festival. But if it's not for the purpose of using a festival, you should not do it. So they said, אחד שחט מרים ואחד שחט סורים, אבל פי שיש למשל מרים שותה מן החדש. Regardless if it's made out of a date beer or the barley beer, even they have an old beer, they may employ artifice so they, as they wishes to drink from the new. So they're making beer on the intermediate days of the festivals for that purpose. So we allow it. That's the way that very contradicts to the way of the opinion of Ravashi. So they said, Hatam lo mocha chamilta or mocha milta. There, with regard to beer, the matter is not evidence. But here, with regard to strainer, the matter is evidence, as people see him suspending the strainer for wine, which is prohibited. We see that he observed Torah scholar. ורבונה בן רבי חיון משמי, ואמר לרבונה ברי רבי חלבן שמי דשקל, ברדתום המנח וברזה לדנה. So he said that who took a slice of garlic and placed it in the spout of a barrel. ואמר לעצמו כמובן, he said, my intent is to store it. So he thereby stopped the spout on Shabbat. And he said, ואזל וניים מביב רב אבל להרגיסה ושר הפירה, ואמר אנם למינם כמכוונה. So the same story, he went and slept in a ferry on a river, and the ferryman sailed the ferry across the river. So he crossed to the other side and inspected the fruits of his vineyard. So he said, I intend to sleep. So in this way, he crossed the river by boat on Shabbat, which is basically prohibited activity. So Amar Lehu, Ha'arama Karamat. We're speaking of artifice, which means that it's a Aramat Drabanan Arabu, which means that do such a manner, it's a rabbinic prohibition. V'tzur Rabanan lo'at lemebad lechatchila. So he said that someone who is a Torah scholar who should not come to perform this action without artifice. So basically Rashi said that it's is no reason to prohibit him from doing it. But only in the rabbinic prohibition with the Torah scholar you can apply to this artifice, but not in something that it's a biblical. But the Rosh and the two Shulchan Aruch in Shin Yun Dalet in 314, many of them are not so pleased with that. They basically said that only in regard to this specific halakha it's applied, and only to someone who is very familiar. But in general, it's not something that it's a path that we should follow, in a sense, to go and circumvent the system with the artifice. Mishna, נותנים מים על גבי השמרים בשביל שיצולו. One may pour water over a sediment that is in a strainer on Shabbat, that it will become clear and clean, that it will be liquid. So whatever left over from that wine come out. That's what Rashi said, and it's not considering a selecting. It's not considering a borer. ומסננין את היין בסודרים ובכפיפה מצרית. They used to filter wine through a cloth or through Egyptian baskets that make from the palm leaves. ונותנים ביצה במסננת של חרדל. One may place an egg in a moisture strainer in order to separate the yolk from the egg white. Okay. And it's not considering a borer. And that's the way the ancient time they used to do it. ועושים אנומלין בשבת. And they may one prepare anumling, which is a wine-based drink on Shabbat. So the GEMARA later in the Kuf Mem in 140 explain what's involved here. Usually they do it for several days in advance. So, but anyway, the big question is what's the amount? Rabbi Yehuda Omer בשבת בחוז, ביום טוב בלגין, ובמועד בחבית. So he said that it's different. In Shabbat, you make only anulmin in a small cup. Festival, large vessel, and in intermediate for the festival, prepare for in a barrel, which is much bigger than lagin.
Big party.
Yes, but even you say that in the Chol HaMoed it's a tircha, it's a big effort, so you can do it for the more than the regular Yom Tov, regular festival. Rabbi Tzadok Omer, hakol lefi ha'orchin. Everything depends upon how many guests the person have. If there are many, so he can make more. That's what the Rambam said. So the Rambam hold that it's not depend so much on the date. It's more depend of how many people he expecting as a guest. אמר זעירי, נותן אדם יין, גמרא, נותן אדם יין צלול ומים צלולים בתוך המשנות בשבת ואינו חושש, אבל אחורים לא. So he said a person may place a clear wine and clear water into a strainer on Shabbat. And he should not be a concern over the prohibition of borer selecting. The wine is drinkable even without the filtering. On the contrary, doing so in a murky liquid, no, because they strain them. מייטיב רבן שמעון גמליאל אומר, תורד אדם, חבית של יין ינה ושמרה ונותן לו חמש מועד בשבת ולא חושד, תרגם מזירה בין הגיטות שלנו. So he said a person can take a barrel of wine, mixing it with the sediment and place the strainer on Shabbat, and he shouldn't be concerned, but it's even murky when with strainer. So Zeiri explains that here is a total regard to a wine between the presses, which means when the wine has yet to ferment and remain murky even after filtering. So that's the way that you can do it. But after the time pass, you should not drink it when it's in that status. And that's the idea of Izraeli said that you should not do it without the shinui. מסננים את היין בסודרים, the Mishna said one may filter wine through the cloth on Shabbat. אמר רב שימי בר חייא ובלבד שלא יעשה גומה. This will condition that will not make a hole, because when we do that, when we pour the wine, a person must diverge from unusual weekend-day manner of performing this activity. So he shouldn't do it.
You shouldn't make a hollow, not a hollow. A hollow, right.
Hollow? Here they say a hole.
Really? Okay, it says in here a hollow, like a...
Right.
I'm not sure.
ובכפיפה מצרית, אמר רב חייא ברש"י אמר רב ולבד שלא יגביה מקרקעיתו של כלי טפח. So that's in the condition that when we talk about the ancient Egyptian basket, so the condition that do not leave the basket in a handbreadth from the bottom of the lower vessel. So the Rabbeinu Yonah explains that that's ensured that one perform the activities in atypical manner. It's like a shinui. Marav hay paronka apalge dechuva share akule kuva asur. So Rabbeinu Hananel said that here we talk about it's permitted to place this cover on his hole for the filtering over the barrel, but it's prohibited to spread it to the entire barrel. That because it's appear that using a filter, it's considering a ohel, some type of tent. Amar Pabalon yadak inish tziniata befum dechozeh chavita mishum demechzik imshameret. Again, the person may not attach a bundle of straw to the mouth of the barrel spigot because it's appear like it's a strainer. So the people in the house of Rav Papa, they used to remove, they carefully pour the beer from one vessel to another, so they drag from one vessel and not pass to the other. אמר לרב חמידיפתי לרבינה, איקה ניצוצות, there's still have some type of final drop that they coming out, so he said, ניצוצות לרב פאפה לא חשיבה, he says that this last drop is not considered significant in his mind, because beer was always really available in this house. And then, ונותנים ביצה במסננת, so also we might place an egg in a master's strainer on Shabbat. Again, you separate the yolk from the egg white. So he said, תנא יעקב קרחה, יעקב קרחה תרתי לברייתא, לפי שאין עושים אותה אלא לגוון. So he said the reason that you do that, it's in order to enhance the color of the food. So you not negate the egg white, significant food, it's not a waste, and therefore you don't do a real breira, it's not, you're selecting two things. So Rashi explained legaven in order letzabea, to make it like a colorful. So even you have here, Rashi explained that it's a two different type of food, so it's not considering breira, because it's only the appearance of the masters, so it's not considering a regular isu borer. And now we're going to practical halachot. We start with a Agadata that speak about שתלוי בתכונה במי שאמר היה ואמר העולם. So it's important note I want to make here that the whole concept of a crisis that befall, it gives us the broad minded, which is a combination of a lot of commentaries, that when you have corruption, that leads to a sadness, especially in the corruption of the judges or people who rules the community, leaders, government, etc. All of that affected and bring crisis to the community. So that's a general statement. Now, a practical halacha, we discuss kshut bakeren, hope in a vineyard. So we said outside of Eretz Israel, it's permitted to sow hope in the vineyard as the custom of 3 elders, but it's prohibited to sow wheat, barley and grapeseed, or 2 species of vegetable and grapeseed together on the same plat of land. So halacha is not according to this with the stringent position of the rabbis. So now we talk about yaev leputa letinok go vezarala. Outside of Eretz Israel, the law of diverse kinds only apply by rabbinic law. So indeed, one may even have a non-Jewish child, so prohibited mixture of diverse kind, which means wheat and barley and grapeseed, for example, on his behalf. And then we said, another halacha we asked, that's very practical halacha about someone passed away at the festival. So they said, if one dies and must be buried on the first day of festival, that's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 5:26. So they said, a non-Jews should engage in the preparation of a grave, the coffin and the shrouds. If there are no non-Jews available, the burial is postponed. However, clothing the deceased, warming water for the purification, and removing and placing the deceased on the grave may be performed by Jews on a festival. That's what we discussed, the Chevra Kadisha. Met b'Yom Tov Sheni, if a person died on the second day of the festival in diaspora, listen carefully, that's the Rambam Hilchot Yom Tov, the first chapter in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 5:26. So they said, Jews attend to his burial, performing even those preparations prohibited for the first day of festival. This apply to the second day of Rosh Hashanah as well, in accordance with the opinion of the Rabbah.
In Israel? On the second day of Rosh Hashanah?
Diaspora.
Okay,
yes.
So what about in Israel on the
Israel
second day of Rosh Hashanah? Because Rosh Hashanah is the only
yes,
2
one
day.
long day. But a lot of writing have over that.
Mm-hmm.
The Or Zarua have a lot, he wrote about it, Minchad Chinuch wrote about it, Rabbi Tukochinsky in Gesher Chaim wrote about it, and it's above the scope of our discussion today. Mit'atef Adam Bechila. One is permitted to wrap himself in the canopy that has straps attached to it and wear it in the public domain on Shabbat. The straps are insignificant relative to the canopy and are not considered a burden. היוצא בטלית שאינה מצויצת כהלכתה בשבת. On Shabbat one may wear a garment into the public domain with ritual fringes that have not been attached properly, is liable to bring a sin offering for carrying a burden. The reason for this ruling is that the fringes are not considered part of the garment because they were not affixed in according to halacha. Ma'arim adam al mishmeret biyom tov. One may employ artifice and suspend strainer on a festival in order to place pomegranates on it and place a sediment in afterward. Matilin shechar b'moed letzorach hamoed. Although certain labors are prohibited in the intermediate days of the festival, it's nonetheless permitted to start brewing beer for the purpose of using it on a festival. If one brews beer for use on a festival, one seed not limit production to the precise amount needed. However, one should employ artifice, as we said, lechatchila. If the newly brewed beer is higher quality than one's old beer, one employ artifice lechatchila, as the conclusion of GEMARA in Moed Katan. Stimat berez chavit. If one is seeping out of a barrel through a hole, it is prohibited to close the hole on Shabbat in any manner. However, the Torah scholar may employ artifice and say that he intends to store garlic in the hole. Now we said that he said it is prohibited to board sheep on a boat on Shabbat, knowing that a non-Jew will sell it. However, a Torah scholar may employ artifice and say that he is boarding the sheep just to sleep or stroll on it, even though he knows that the non-Jew will cause the sheep to sell. Nowadays, employing artifice is prohibited because Torah scholars are not considered to be of high enough caliber. That's the Torah Chaim 339. נותנים מים על גבי השמרים ומסננים את היין. It is permitted on Shabbat to pour water into wine sediment that was suspended in a strainer before Shabbat. And it's permitted to filter wine on Shabbat as in untypical manner, which means through a cloth or utilizing Egyptian basket. However, in deference to Shabbat, one must make certain to avoid lifting the basket from the base of the vessel, that clearly demonstrating that he is making a change. The same applied to the egg in a master strainer. They're permitted to crack egg into a strainer, which is the master's in a being strained, so long as the master is placed in a strainer before Shabbat. That's the Mishna said. And also, a person might place a clear wine and the clear water into a strainer on Shabbat, provided that one will not make a hole, which means the Mishna said when straining markedly wine on Shabbat through a cloth, one should not make a hole in a cloth to diverge from the method of straining a weekday. That's the Rav Ashi Bar Chia.
Ka